Welcome to FailCraft, the podcast where we dive into the messy, real side of success and explore how setbacks become the stepping stones to growth and clarity. I'm your host, Ezekiel Iferia, and today we are joined by Nandita Brahmbhatt. She spent 12 years excelling in the corporate world, thinking she was safe, until one day she was made redundant while she had a young baby at home. That crisis forced her to make a vow she would never put her financial future in the hands of a boss again. But her journey into entrepreneurship wasn't a straight line to freedom. She actually found herself trapped in a cycle, working harder than ever and becoming a slave to the business she built. She's here to talk about how she broke that cycle. We'll discuss why failure is the best teacher and how to stop your business from running your life. So, Nandita, it's an honor to welcome you to FailCraft. Thank you for joining us.
It's a pleasure to be here, Ezekiel.
Great to have you here. So let's get started. You wrote that your journey started with a crisis, being made redundant from your corporate job while you had a young baby at home. That's quite a terrifying moment. So can you take us back to that specific moment? So what was the specific thought or fear that made you decide, I am never doing this again?
So we had purchased a house, Ezekiel. After having my baby, we didn't have much space in the home we were in. So having a good job, I thought, let's buy a property which we can all fit more comfortably in. Let's expand our kind of horizons and possibilities. So as a family, we obviously were embarking on lots of new journeys and lots of new situations. So having a baby is not an easy thing. It's not something that, we're given any instruction for at school. So a lot of learning along the way.
Yeah.
And then my job was really good. It was very stable. It was a very, good career to be in. I was working for a big pharmaceutical company and promoting some really good medicines to medical professionals. And I loved my job, absolutely loved my job. But then we received an email. I think it was like a Friday evening to say, we've all been called in on a Monday morning. And I was living in London at the time and we'd been told we're going to meet in a hotel in Birmingham. So we walk into this hotel on the Monday morning. I had no idea what was about to happen. And we were all sat down and told, right, take a seat. This is the situation we're having in the company. And unfortunately, we're going to have to let the whole team go. So this was a big shock to my system because I was like, what do you mean we're going to have to let everybody go? Like, I have a baby, bills to pay, it's not easy to just go and get another job. And it was very frightening because you've taken on something which is a responsibility of paying a mortgage each month. We had a little bit of savings, but we were very young. So, myself and my husband, we got married at 22. I had my daughter at 24. So we hadn't had years of savings. I'd just finished university, graduated. We'd saved some money, but not enough to be like, we're going to be comfortable no matter what happens. So it was scary. It was uncertain. We had no idea. So the chance of losing our home was there. We had a baby. So if it was just myself and my husband, we'd move around, we'd downsize, we'd do other things. But now with another human being in our life that we're responsible for, it was a whole new kind of set of decisions to make. And I started job hunting, within that week and looking for other positions. But what had been happening in the industry at that time was a lot of new rules, regulations, a lot of things were going on. So it was a similar scene across the board. They weren't really hiring, there weren't a lot of opportunities out there. And I think mentally I made that decision, that this is not fun. When you get told by somebody else that you're no longer employed, you feel a big loss of control over your life, your finances, your future, the stability of your family. And all these emotions I wasn't ready for. I wasn't sure how I was going to navigate it all. So I made a decision that, a lot of people venture into the world of entrepreneurship and business because they get to be the boss. They get to decide how things are done. So I made a decision that no boss is ever going to fire me again. It might be a short period of time. Might have to go back to a job, but I never want to feel that feeling of being told, we're sorry you don't have a job anymore.
All right, Nandita, thank you very much for sharing that story with us. So you left your job to find freedom, but you also admitted that you ended up letting the business dictate your life. So I'd like to ask, why do many people leave a 9 to 5 boss only to become an even worse boss to themselves?
I think, again, Ezekiel, it was a brand new place to navigate for me. So I didn't realize when you own a small business, how many different roles you have to play.
Mm,
In a job, you only have to play one role.
yeah.
So when I was in sales, I was only responsible for sales. Now, in my small business, I was responsible for marketing, admin, finance, HR, sales, you name it. And I'd bought a franchise, so I was responsible for dealing with head office. And it was a business in child education. So we had safety, safeguarding, making sure everybody was DBS checked. So many rules and regulations that you have to comply with. I think I wasn't ready for all these different roles. So that's speaking from my own personal experience. Obviously, since I've been working with many other businesses, you asked me that question, that how come so many people end up in that situation? A lot of people I work with, they pay themselves the least in the company and sometimes last. And there are many business owners I've worked with, Ezekiel, who don't even pay themselves. They
Mm,
often end up working really hard in their company and they don't get paid because the company's struggling. When they come to me, they're like, oh, I haven't paid myself for a few months. I haven't paid myself for, maybe the last 1 year sometimes as well. So they actually become more, they become the hardest working, lowest paid employee of their own business. So it's something that I see often. At that time for me, again, I had no idea how to navigate it. I was running around, working around the clock, where before when I was an employee, I could come home, finish the work I had to do, turn my laptop off, and I could switch off. I could, you know, call it an evening. And then obviously there's always things on your mind. You're always still kind of, got thoughts whizzing around about work at times, but you could pretty much switch off to some degree because everything is not on your shoulders. When you've got your own business, there were nights where I stayed awake all night thinking about how I'm going to pay the bills the next day, how we're going to get more customers. We've got to get our taxes filed. We've got to get, like I said, all these applications done for our staff to make sure everybody is DBS checked and make sure everybody's fully trained in the systems we're using. And the workload was more than I had anticipated. And even though I had a team, I didn't really know how to delegate properly. So I was giving them tasks to do, but majority of the burden all still sat on my shoulders.
okay, thank you very much for sharing that. So, Nandita, you spoke in Dubai about using failure to propel us forward. So, I'd like to know, what's a specific failure in your early business days that felt like a disaster at that time, but actually taught you a necessary lesson?
So there are many, Ezekiel. I think I could make a list so long we'll be here for weeks and weeks talking about it. But at that time, failure felt fatal. It felt like the worst thing ever. I was a straight A student, okay? I'd been
Mm,
taught that from my family, there was no option, but you have to get straight A's in your education. You have to get through topping the class. You have to be, really hardworking. So for me, I always saw failure as a negative, and I always felt that if I fail at something, everything's going to end. And that was not something that helped me. That mindset was very scary. So, for example, when I started this particular business, I felt like at one point I was not getting any students. Everything had
mm,
gone quiet. Like there were two times in the year when things really picked up in the business because it was in the education field. It was September and it was January. So when people came back from their summer holidays and people came back from their Christmas holidays. So I ran an open day to promote my services, to get new customers and students on board. And Ezekiel, I promoted it. I sent out leaflets. There was all this, different things that we were doing. And I turned up at this open day and only 2 people came. I was expecting there to be like 50 or 100 customers and people interested in what we're doing and excited to join. And I sat there with my hands on my head going, how much of a disaster is this? We're going to get no new sign-ups this um, season. There are no people here interested in what we're doing. What have we done wrong? I had nobody to, you know, tell me what I was doing right or wrong. I kind of had to navigate that by myself. But I really beat myself up over that. And I was like, this is your fault. You don't know what you're doing. A lot of negativity came from inside of me, a lot of shame, because I felt like, okay, I know what I'm doing. I know how to sell. I've been trained to sell. I'm really passionate about this business and I want to get all these new customers in the door. And I felt like how shameful. I had only 2 people come to my open day. Nobody else wanted to come. So I obviously realized that there's many things I need to learn, many things I need to step back and really spend some time learning from other people. So one thing we're taught at school, Ezekiel, is you must never copy the other children in the class. One thing I learned in business is go to other centers who are doing very well and copy
Mm.
what they're doing,
Yeah.
copying what somebody successful is already doing is not shameful. So even though we're taught all throughout our educational journey, don't copy from others, that's fine. Obviously, it makes sense when you're doing exams and studying. But actually, in the world of business, I was still applying some of those old thinking patterns, those old mindsets that I had. And very quickly, I learned go and spend time with other successful business owners, learn what they're doing, understand what makes their events successful, understand how they bring in new clients. Don't be afraid to ask questions. Go to those places, go to the center where they're really excelling and patiently and peacefully learn from them, observe their behaviors, observe their habits, observe their actions that they take, rather than just blaming yourself, rather than being in your own head about everything. Go and copy things, but in a positive way, obviously being mindful of people's, intellectual property, copyrights. I don't mean that you can just
Yeah.
go and copy everything. But these were centers who were within our own brand. They were people who were running the same business as me, but just in different areas. So in those circumstances, I mean, today we're very lucky. There are people like yourself who are running podcasts where we can go and learn from. There's a lot of material on the internet where we can go onto YouTube and learn things. There wasn't as much around at that time. So at that time, the best way was to go physically to other centers, to go to other business owners and say, hey, how are you doing this? What can I learn? What can I take from what you do and apply it to my business? So that failure it was very painful at the time, but it taught me a lot of valuable lessons. And how I said at that time, I always saw failure as a complete shame on me. I felt guilty for not performing. But when I spoke in Dubai, as you just mentioned, it was an education conference.
Mm.
And I think that when we are young, if we are taught, so I think as we, really develop education in the future, we should be encouraging children to fail more because actually you learn more through your failures than you
Yeah.
do in your successes. So if we tell them that go and try something, it's not shameful to fail. It's not wrong to get something wrong, but you should learn from it. So nowadays you see when people are, a lot of students and children, when they're playing sports day, they say, oh, everybody's a winner. Everybody's, getting medals for participation. Yes, that's important to celebrate participation. But I think teaching children to be resilient and teaching business owners to learn from failures more than you learn from your successes is something that I think we really need to help people to build that resilience as early as possible so that when we do get to, I was like 25 at that age. By that point, I wasn't used to failing. I hadn't understood how to deal with failure or how to take my learnings and get back up quickly. So I feel like it's really important and it's really powerful that we ingrain that into the next generation. That go out there, make bold moves, go and do things that are challenging and that other people may not even be doing. Because
Mm.
actually, if you fail, you're going to learn something from it. So don't be afraid to fail.
Okay. So, you help people live life on their own terms. So, what does that actually look like for you today, and how do you know when you've achieved it?
So TERMS is an acronym, Ezekiel. T stands for time. Everybody has different goals, and this is what I mean by living on your own terms.
Mm-hmm.
Some people want to devote like 10 hours a day to their business. Some people only want to work 3 or 4 hours. So, what does your ideal goal look like in terms of the time you want to spend in your business? I'm going to give you an example of a business owner I've been working with recently. Like, they'll be working till 3 o'clock in the morning, putting orders for their business through, working on customer queries, doing things to make sure that they deliver a good service for their customers. But actually, that's not how they wanted to live. There are some people who are happy doing that. But this business owner wanted to spend more time with his family. He actually wanted to go out riding his bikes. He wanted to spend more time doing things that made him happy. We kind of decided, what does a T look like for you? An ideal work day would look like. I start at 9 o'clock and I finish by 7 o'clock or 6 o'clock, not working till 3 o'clock in the morning. So, what does time, your ideal time in your business, and then all the other things that you want to in your life? So, how much time do you want to spend with your family? How much time do you want to spend on your hobbies? How much time do you want to just spend having fun, going out with your friends and, having a great time? So really defining that. E stands for energy. So how much of yourself and your energy do you want to put into your business? So some people are like, I'm going to do everything it takes. I don't mind, I can give my whole self. Whereas I work with a lot of moms who say, I want to give a lot of energy to my business, but my priority is my child. So it's very important that I conserve myself a little bit because when I go home, I don't want my child just to get what's left of me. I want to give the best of me to my child as well. So we define that because it's not just in terms of time, like how much are they running around? How much can they afford to hire other people to take on some of that energetic kind of drain on them for the business? So sometimes it works with VAs, sometimes it works with automations and technology. Sometimes we help them with creating a process so they don't have to think about certain things all the time. So that's what the E stands for. R stands for roles and responsibilities. So what roles are you playing in your business that you love to do? And which roles do you not want to do? So, how I said, I love selling. I love talking to customers. I love being an active member of my business, but I don't want to do the admin. I don't want to do the HR. I don't want to do the accounts. So those roles is very important for me to be able to delegate and outsource those. Then we come to, which is money. How much money do you actually want to make? Because business at the bottom line is very much about how much money you want to pay yourself, but also how much value do you want to create within your business? Because a lot of business owners I work with, they exit their businesses for a very big lump sum. So, how much money do you want to make now? And how much money do you want to exit your business from later on in the future? So, we look at money now and we look at money future. Year on year, how much more do they want to earn? But also, how much do they want the business to be worth? The last thing we look at is sanity. So, how much do you want to just be able to switch off and sleep at night? How much do you want to feel like, literally, how I said, the business is not running you? You are in control of how the business works. You can predict all the different crises that may occur. Because a wise person once told me that if a crisis is already occurring, you're too late. So you should have had all these things in your plans in terms of how you deal with problems in your business. So TERMS is an acronym that I was taught by one of my mentors, and I now help business owners to establish their terms. And you asked me how I measure the success of how we get there. We put all of these things down on paper with numerical values. So, how much time, energy, roles, responsibilities, money, and sanity are very clearly defined where the business owner is now and what does their ideal terms look like. And obviously, my goal is to work with them to bridge that gap and ensure that they get to their North Star. What their ideal life looks like is what I really help them to work out. And like I said, success means that we're hitting all of those metrics.
Awesome, Nandita. So I like to ask you a personal question. After navigating redundancy, the
Mhm.
trap of overwork, and now finding true freedom, I'd like to know, what does being successful truly mean to you now?
So, Ezekiel, the truth is now it's very much about how much impact I make every single day. Every other business owner who turns around and says to me, Nandita, I was so overwhelmed. I was so overworked. I had never known how to create all these systems in my business so that I didn't have to be the accountant and the bookkeeper and the admin person and the salesperson. And I had to do all the managing the staff. I can now do the roles I really want to do. I really enjoy working in my business every single day, but I'm also making the money I want to make. That is what success looks like to me now. I absolutely believe that if you have a good business, it should be giving you the life that you want. It should be giving you the freedom that you want. It should be giving you the fun, the enjoyment, the fulfillment, really giving you a life that you love living. But the number of business owners that I meet, Ezekiel, who don't live like that, not because they don't have the capabilities or the talents, they are so passionate. When you meet these people, they are like amazing at what they do. Like, for example, I work with, like, how I had an education business, other tutors. They're some of the best teachers. They are so brilliant at what they do. But when they live life on their own terms and they come to me and say, now I have lots of time, money, energy, I'm so satisfied, and actually I'm living the life of my dreams, it's amazing. So they're very talented people. They're very dedicated business owners. They're very capable, but they're giving so much of their time and energy away for not the return that they deserve. So the return in terms of money, in terms of time back and freedom back. There's so many things that people want in their life and they think they can't have it all. So I think that's another lie that we're told in life, that, you can have what you want, but you can't have everything. So a lot of people believe, well, if I've got a business, then I have to work round the clock. If I've got a business, then I can't have freedom. They kind of just accept that as a reality. So for me now, it's very important that I spend time with business owners and tell them that's not the truth. You can have everything you want. You can have time, money, freedom. You can have a business that you're so passionate about. You can have a lot of satisfaction from it. It's just that you don't know the systems that it takes. Sometimes you don't know how you're going to do that. And sometimes you even know, a lot of them know the information, but they're just stuck in their own head. They don't know which steps to take in which order and how to get everything into place. So for me, success is very, very much about seeing people thrive, seeing them get that spark back. When they first started their business, that excitement, that joy, that anticipation of going, I can't wait to run this business.
Hmm.
I love to see that coming back, that kind of sparkle in their eye, that joy for running their business. When they get that back, Ezekiel, that is true success for me.
All right, that's a really fantastic way to define success for yourself, Nandita. So finally, for our listeners who wants to get your help to succeed faster, so where is the best place for them to connect with you?
So I'm on all social media under my name. So you can find me on Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn. Shoot me a DM on any of those and we can arrange a call. But also on my website, on Entrepreneur Success Foundry. The website is www.esf.global. There's also a book a call link. So they can go there, book a call. We can have a chat. Look at where you are now. Where would you like to be? And obviously, there's no obligation if you don't want to, continue working with me, but I can give you a roadmap, something that you can go away and implement by yourself. But actually, people love the accountability. They love having someone to speak to regularly. and really make sure they're hitting those milestones, because sometimes it is difficult when we're doing everything alone in our business.
Yeah.
We may have a team, but at the end of it, at the top of the tree is just the business owner. So just having someone to speak to, bounce ideas off of, create that plan. Like I said, I can create the plan with anyone that wants to book a call. But please reach out. Don't struggle alone. Let's get your spark back. Let's get that excitement back. And hey, if we have a few failures along the way, we're going to learn from them. So don't ever be afraid to fail and make mistakes. But it's very important to keep trying things and making sure that we succeed and get to the place that we want to get to.
Fantastic. Nandita, it's been a true honor having this conversation with you on this podcast today, and I am very excited to have you on the show.
Thank you, Ezekiel.